Benny Rubin, CEO at Senders, all the way from Brooklyn, New York. Welcome.
That's
Sales
right.
Podcast, man. How the heck are you?
Good. I was enjoying our pre-chat. We can bring some of that energy in. I'm just peppering you with all sorts of questions.
Hey, man, what's up with you young whippersnappers, huh? What's up with this hair? My son,
Oh,
you call my
okay.
son, he's in San
Well,
Francisco. He's almost 27. All you young dudes got this big bushy hair. What's going on?
okay. So first of all, I'm almost 40, so they're copying me basically. That's what's
Oh, that's
happening.
fine. But, I mean, what kind of example are you setting for these younger kids?
My hair is quite wild these days. For the record, I don't have a TikTok channel, so look, the sun's coming in and washing me out. You can't even see
It's
my hair
washing
now
you
because of the
out. Look at
sun.
that. We talk about hair and it goes dark.
Yeah. What is happening with the light here? Just the
I
sun
don't know.
decided to make an appearance in this
Yeah.
winter day in Brooklyn for fun. But hair, things like that. Have you ever, things like this, like kind of matter in sales,
You
I
think?
think. Yeah, I think that generally being recognizable and sort of having a little bit of a slight amount of flair, whatever it is,
Yeah,
can help. It help
sure.
like smooth things over. Plus, there's sort of an interesting thing that happens in a lot of settings is that if your industry is really like staid and boring, but you're a little bit somewhat
Yeah,
charismatic or like a little bit kind of off, then that
right.
brings some levity to the situation. It's sort of, and it can be an interesting juxtaposition that can, you know, smooth things over.
So
And
you're
it's sort of
saying
like, wow,
I'm
I
the
look like I'm into witness protection now. If those who are listening on audio don't know this, but the sun just came out and it totally washed out my video. So I actually look like, it looks like you're talking to someone who's like, you
no, I have this
knew the cult
advanced
leader way
setting.
back when.
I have this advanced setting. Anybody shows up with long hair, it washes them out. I paid extra for that feature on this recording software. So you're saying I'm the old guy in the movies, the old retired crusty dude with the flat top haircut, screaming at kids, "Get off my lawn." Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right,
But
all
keep
right,
in mind, if that's your sales persona, that can also work very well, right?
all right, all right. I'm growing it out. All right, that's it. I'm going hippie, man. I'm going down to my butt.
I don't think that. Maybe just wear a funny hat. Like I don't know. Maybe you don't need to
That's
grow
that's
hair.
better. All right, I try to grow my hair. I can't go more than 3 weeks on a beard. And
Is your
I
hair
don't know.
actually curly?
Probably would be. It's certainly wavy. Like man, my hair goes all over the place. It's hard to maintain. I just tell them to cut it short and let it grow.
Makes sense.
So
Makes sense.
we shall see. But enough about personal grooming, okay?
Yeah, you can edit this out if you want to later.
I don't edit anything. I just publish.
Yeah, let everyone skip this. If you found the last 5 minutes annoying,
No, they're used to my
send me an
rambling.
invoice. Send me an invoice for 5 minutes of your time.
After 636 episodes, they're used to the rambling.
That's wild.
So, man, you're all over the place. But I want to talk about a few things. So, you've got
Sure.
your own biz, been doing this for
Hmm.
7 years, 7.5 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, since 2016.
2016.
But
Yeah, this one started then.
I'm looking at your LinkedIn here, and you mentioned it before, but so you went to Japan to
Yeah.
study, what, for a year or so and ended up staying
Yeah.
7?
I lived there for 7 years. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd
Yeah.
that come about?
So I went to music school. I have my degree in music.
Oh, nice.
I came from a family of people that were really into the arts.
That's
And
that's the deal, right? Because my son, he's a musician. So I think it's a musician thing with this long
yeah,
hair,
could
right?
be.
All right. All
Could
right.
be. Very into the arts.
I'm with you.
Um, and I was really excited about music. And my parents were very encouraging. And I went to music school. And in music school, I got really into, played violin, viola, electric bass. I love music. I still make music to this day. I got really interested in business and I got really interested in Japanese in particular. I got really interested in the Japanese language. I became sort of a Japanese language nerd. And this is 2000, whatever, 3 or something, 20 some odd years ago, for those who can count backwards.
Hey,
And
tell those
I,
people honking the horn in Brooklyn that you're on with the sales
yeah, come
whisperer and they
on.
need to behave themselves.
Jeez. Give me 1 second. I need to close these blinds or something. God, I mean, how am I supposed to? There, got a little bit of color back to my face.
Look at that.
Um, the so when you kind of get the business bug, when you don't really need to get the business bug, everyone listening has gotten the business bug at some point where they said, maybe I'm not really supposed to be a worker, so to speak. I'm supposed to be like a leader. I'm supposed to, you have a little bit of that feeling in you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know what to do with it, but I read a lot about business and I was kind of into it. And I was really into Japanese, and those two things were kind of swirling around in my brain. And so after music school, I eventually moved to Japan. I went there to study for a year, and I spent a year really focusing on Japanese language. And then I went back to the States for a year. Trust me, people listening, this has some payoff. It all comes back around. All right? It all comes back around.
All right.
I went out and played bass on tour with a Sony artist around the time of the financial crisis. And so I got this weird view of the United States, like as the economy was in that weird crumbling standstill thing happening. We were kind of going from town to town, and I was seeing all this. At the same time was the dramatic rise of social media. All of a sudden, Twitter, Facebook, these things really mattered culturally, and they didn't really before. And I decided to start a business that helped Western artists connect directly with their fans in Japan. And keep in mind, everyone listening knows this. When you're 23, 24, when you have an idea for a business, that you literally might as well just be mumbling to yourself in the shower. Like, it has no bearing on anything, right? Like, you get older, you get more capable. When you say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business, it really means something. But at the time, I had no idea or concept of what this would even mean. So I ended up becoming a B2B salesperson, because when I got back to Japan and I was like, okay, social media for artists, how does that work? So I had to hustle my way into getting meetings with the major record labels and then pitching them. And you have all the sort of foibles that happen early on in businesses when you're trying. For example, I landed a meeting with the head of international music at Universal Music. And I went in and I made my pitch, and I was really proud. And he was like, well, that sounds compelling. So you want to run Justin Bieber's Japanese language social media, and it sounds okay. How much do you want to charge? And I literally had not thought of how much to charge. It didn't even occur to me that you had to name a price. So I just named my exact amount in rent. I was like 84,000 yen per month, because that was my exact amount I was paying. And he was like, sounds reasonable. Okay, let's give it a shot. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And that sort of price tag. But anyways, I built that company for a bunch of years, and then I sold it. And I had to do a sales process in Japan in order to sell the business, which, you don't know how hard it is to sell a business until you actually do it. And we got very lucky because we went to one of our bigger agency partners, and we're like, we're thinking about doing something else, and we want to sell this. And they're like, oh, we'll buy it. And I'm like, oh, wow, damn. Okay. So we sold it, and then I started another business that failed miserably. So I had a partner at the time who's still my best friend, a gentleman named Connor.
Was Connor in Japan with you, or was he your U.S.
Connor also
rep?
spoke Japanese because we met in Japanese school, but he lived in the U.S. and we were sort of doing the thing. Now, keep on. This is 20 years ago, some odd years ago. We're not talking crazy scale business. We're talking under 7 figures a year style business, just like social media content creation, when that was a thing that people still do it, of course, and people still make money doing it, but that was sort of new.
It was harder because like now, I mean, I use AI to translate posts, and I don't need to pay somebody 8,400 yen. It happens for free automatically.
Yeah, pretty much. So I mean, it's a different world, that's for sure. And also the landscape is much simpler. I remember once I went to a conference and I shared a stage with someone whose claim to fame was that they had 100,000 followers on Twitter, and the guy was talking like he was,
royalty.
Like he was a Kardashian. It was like, well, let me tell you how I built my audience. And at the time, he was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And now you're like, 100,000 what? Like, come on, get out of here. I mean, I don't have 100,000 followers, so, But even still, that's not a crazy impressive number. Anyway, so then to sort of circle back to where we end up today, I moved back to the States and I started a company and we raised some money and we did an accelerator and we did all these things. We ended up failing really miserably. Like we had to shut it down and it did not go anywhere we wanted to. But I got to know all these entrepreneurs. So when I decided to set up a new business, I asked them all like, hey, what's up? What do you need help with? And a lot of them said, well, we want to do cold email, but it's kind of a pain and we don't really like to do it. So I was like, okay, I'll start a cold email outbound agency. At the time, there were very few of them. Even in 2016, there were very few of them. There were a handful of people that were doing it, but not that many. And so for 4 years, I did it kind of with like between 4 and 10 clients at a time and kind of did it the way that smaller agencies operate. When the pandemic hit in 2020, I decided to take it really seriously. And we grew from 20K a month in revenue to 200K a month in revenue. And I had to build a whole team. And we started to take email deliverability really seriously because Google
Why'd you dabble? Why'd you dabble for 4 years? And what about the pandemic made you switch gears?
That's a really good question. I think that folks with businesses that are desperate to grow them oftentimes can grow them. But I could sense that the water was not pushing me, was not helping me. There wasn't a current that I was riding. You'd gain a couple clients would churn off. There wasn't like this is gonna become really big. This is gonna become really important. Like there's a lot of demand just waiting. But what changed was when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden it was like, okay, the current's moving and I'm if you're getting so many introductions from clients to new clients, if you're onboard a client on Tuesday and Wednesday they do an intro and literally the intro that they do says, we have no results for them yet, right? Their intro would be, I mean, you've seen this in your life too, Wes, where the intro is like, hi, Wes, meet Benny. Benny's team seems to know what they're doing. You should talk about doing cold email for them. You're like, okay, something's up, like something's going on. So that was really where I said, okay, now it's probably worth not just me being a cold email dude that helps people with cold email, which is a great thing to do, and but I was like, maybe I should build a business with this and really try to take it seriously and try to get myself out of the way a little bit by hiring some people and really doing it. But through that process, I started to hire technical folks because we started to find that email deliverability and sending at a higher volume was going to be important. And so that became our main thing. And now almost all of our clients, we currently have, I think we have 75 concurrent clients. So you can see that as big, or you can see that as small, you can see it however you want. I'm sure people listening to this have thousands and thousands of clients and tens of millions of dollars in revenue, and others maybe are just getting started and have 2 or 3 clients or 5 clients or have maxed out at 10 clients. So, you can judge it however you want. Currently, we have 75 concurrent clients, and almost all of them rely on us for the technical side of email sending and not really as a lead gen agency. So we're very good at fixing deliverability problems, scaling email, scaling cold email, and doing that kind of thing. So that really became the thing that we do most for all of our clients.
So what is...
That was a lot. You let me talk for a long time. You got to jump in there, man. You got to keep me...
No, I'm taking notes, man.
Cool. I appreciate that.
What is so hard about email deliverability? I mean,
it's a great question.
Are you tweaking their existing platform? Like, is this somebody on HubSpot or Keep or Marketo or whatever? Or is it like a homegrown email and you're helping them with compliance?
So
this is interesting that you're that involved with that many people.
Yeah, I know. And millions of dollars in revenue, right? So we're not even talking like a small... I mean, we're a small company in the sense, right now we're 10 people. So the benefit of having been around a while, like you have, and I'm almost 40 and you're older than me, which, geez... We've seen a lot of phases of email. The phase that we're in is a little bit of a surprising phase. So what happened is Google and Microsoft used to be very permissive. If you were an enterprise user of their software, they basically would let you do whatever you needed to do using their systems. If you wanted to cold email 400 people in a day, they would let you cold email 400 people in a day. It was in their acceptable use policy that you shouldn't use it for unsolicited email, but it's not illegal to cold email people in the United States of America. You're allowed to do that. So it was sort of like, well, yeah, you plug in your email account into reply.io or outreach.io or whatever the systems were at the time. You send some emails, no big deal. And also very large enterprises or larger companies that had a Marketo instance or something like that. Marketo wasn't really in the business of policing if you had a few of your flows were done to cold people using their IP addresses for sending. They were kind of like, oh, it's B2B, like that's what they do. When email started to become crazy abused, all those systems started to say, okay, hey, wait a minute, now we're going to actually police this. We're going to sort of clamp down on the amount of emails. And then you have the other side, which is you move from mass spam operations in the early 2000s and probably up till 2012, 2013. Young people don't even remember this, but pharma spam was a real thing. It was like billions, like maybe 50, 60, 70, 80
It's still
billion.
in my spam.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, so pharma spam used to be the most dominant thing that everyone would talk about.
Yeah.
Now it's much less. Now it's more scam style emails. So
Yeah, phishing.
what happened is, this is getting a little bit silly, so I hope people like a little history lesson. There will be a test after this for everyone listening. It used to be
It's gonna
that
be an
crazy
open book test, though. So
open book test. Crazy high volume of email was the thing that Google, Microsoft, Yahoo were trying to defend against. And the way they use it, they've bought huge armies of computers that they would turn into like email bot armies, and they would deploy emails that would come from a million different places, all these different domains and everything, hit inboxes, and they would defend against them. And it moved to being these very, very targeted attacks. And one of the ways that you do a very, very targeted attack is you illegally or illicitly log into Wes's email, and you sit there a day, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. You learn Wes's email patterns. Then you send an email to Wes's team from Wes saying, hey, I need that password reset. Can you send over this? So we're seeing a lot more of that scam style thing. And the way that those happen is people break into Google Workspace accounts. They hang out there. They do a very targeted attack. Or they do a very clever spoofing thing where they're imitating you, but they're also maybe replying to your email in some sort of way that makes it look like, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems that Google and Microsoft ratcheted up their defense of use of your own email systems. This is a long way of saying that they used to let you send 400 emails a day or 500 emails a day or whatever. And now if you try to get 25 cold emails out, they oftentimes are suspending people very, very quickly. So when sales teams hit that, they go, well, look, we're not scammers. We're just a B2B SaaS company. We know our target market. We get a healthy, interested reply rate when we cold email them. We need a way to email them that's not going to get us flagged by Google or Microsoft or whatever all the time. So they go out to market to look, and we're one of the people that go, hey, we'll manage the IP addresses, we'll manage the domain, we'll manage the DNS, we'll hold your hand through this process, we'll make sure that your emails can get sent and get delivered, as long as you keep doing normal, rational kinds of things. So most of our clients send between 400 and 4,000 cold emails a day. They usually have very large total addressable markets. They have sales team. They sort of know what they're doing, and we are the team that helps them make sure that they're staying out of spam and not doing damage in their domain and things like that. Does that make sense? That was a pretty long explanation.
So,
But did I answer the question?
kind of.
Kind of. Jeez.
Well,
5,000 words later. No, I'm just
trying
kidding.
to understand, like, the use case, because are you saying that companies, because typically, like, if somebody has a Salesforce installation, Salesforce in and of itself is not an email marketing tool,
Right.
and large enterprises, and even in the SMB space, typically you don't want a salesperson having a lot of power to send huge e-blasts to their lists.
Right.
They usually mess it up, right?
Yep.
And so if I have Salesforce, and there are certain rule sets that can be put in, that a certain amount of emails can be sent. I guess, how does a company with 100 employees and a Salesforce installation, aren't they typically going to have, Marketo, Pardot, Marpost,
Sure.
something, a third-party tool of some sort for email marketing?
So they do, but interestingly, the most common way to do cold email in an enterprise like you mentioned is they buy a tool like Outreach.io. And Outreach.io is basically a little sandbox for each sales rep where they have their templates. They pipe in the data from Salesforce so they can pull the list from Salesforce. All the emails that get sent get logged into Salesforce, and it gives them a certain number of emails a day that they can send. And they have admin controls. They say you can send 200 emails a day, or you can send 800 emails a day or something. So this is the environment that the salesperson is working in. And Outreach has all these other tools and data and stuff that helps, let's say, an SDR manager, which is a sales development rep leader, or a business development rep leader, manager, VP of sales, or whatever, orchestrate and manage these things. Interestingly, sending emails from Outreach.io does not use your Salesforce email capacity, because people buy Salesforce email capacity from Salesforce. Does not have to do with Marketo, Pardot, or any of these, systems.
Sure.
They plug their Gmail accounts into them, typically, or their Microsoft Mail accounts into them, whatever Microsoft system they're using, and that's how they're actually doing the mail sending. So it's a mail from their corporate mail account, a salesperson, a sales rep, or a sales development rep. So, because we're talking cold, right? So imagine like a scenario, we can paint a picture.
But Outreach.io not allow cold email?
Outreach.io does, but they don't have IP addresses. They don't have any email infrastructure themselves. They're just the interface for loading in templates, email targets, and measuring the data on this end. So it's more like the structure that we're talking about is a sales rep has 1,000 key accounts or 2,000 key accounts that they're supposed to go after. That's their part of the market.
Yep.
And they want to email these people 3, 4, 5 times over the course of 2 or 3 months. Outreach is enabling them to sequence these emails.
Sure.
And Google is the one who's backstopping the sending. Where things get ruptured is if Google feels like they don't want you doing this email because it's in their acceptable use policy. They flag you. They start to suspend your account and make it impossible to leverage the Outreach.io tool.
So if Outreach, all right, so Outreach doesn't have an IP address, so it's
That's
going
right.
back to my Salesforce installation, which is then connected to my corporate.
It actually
Verizon
bypasses
account?
Salesforce entirely. Yeah, it just, your Gmail account is plugged directly into Outreach. Salesforce is just logging all the activity that you've done in the account to make sure that it's all synced up. Mm-hmm.
So Wes Schaefer, the sales rep, has.
Can you imagine, Wes, going back to doing that? I'm just kidding.
Sure. Hey, if the money's right. All right. So I'm hired by this big company.
Sure.
I go set up my own Gmail account, wesschaefer@gmail.com.
Well, if you work for a big company, they assign you an email address.
So they give me an email address.
Yeah, like wes.schaefer@bigcompany.com.
That's fine. So you're saying they're plugging that into their Salesforce and sending their own separate emails apart from Outreach?
So Outreach is the place that they're sequencing cold emails, typically cold. They're sequencing emails. Outreach syncs with Salesforce because Salesforce is where all the customer data is that they're going to be emailing or whatever the data is. So they're pulling it from Salesforce. The actual send links back to their regular corporate email inbox and sends it from the email infrastructure they use for regular corporate emailing. That's typically how these systems are configured. So there's no sending happening from Salesforce.
Okay, but big companies don't typically have huge banks of servers and IP addresses for cold email, do they?
Well, no, that's the reason why they use M365 or Google Mail these days. Now,
Okay.
very, very large companies have their own thing going on, like a very
Sure,
large
once
bank.
you reach a certain size.
Yeah, but if you're talking, let's say if we're talking startup land, maybe like even up to IPO, these days most companies are just using Google or Microsoft as their email service provider,
Okay.
and then they impose limits, and then there are issues that come with that, and sending from your main domain creates issues, and so awareness of this problem.
Where do you come in?
So what we do is we replace the Google sending or the Microsoft sending, and we move their sending to IP pools that we manage and control. We move their emails from their main domain, which can create deliverability problems for all the emails going on from their main domain. We typically move to subdomains. We have backup subdomains. We manage IMAP servers for receiving emails that need to be routed back to reps. We're creating an extension of their current email infrastructure that allows them to send emails more freely with less potential for an individual rep doing damage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the world that we inhabit.
How does something like SendGrid play in your world? Are they a competitor, or do you use them?
No, we have used SendGrid. We've used other places to house IP addresses. The way that SendGrid is sort of on a very basic level. Email is sort of four things. It's domains, like senders.co is a domain. It's IP addresses, which is sort of like an IP address is, but it's where the email actually gets sent from, in a certain sense. Then you have DNS records, which is what sits on the back of the website basically and dictates what emails should be going if they're legitimate, and where they should be received if they're legitimate. And then you have everything else, like the email text and the email copy and all these other things that come into play. If you stop sending from Google or stop sending from somewhere like that, you've now exposed various elements that weren't exposed before. You're exposing IP addresses now. You can actually choose which IP addresses you send from. You can choose to house those IP addresses or use IP addresses supplied by someone like SendGrid, if they'll allow it, or by another technical platform that assigns email addresses. For example, like Amazon SES is Amazon's version of that, where you can send emails from Amazon and expose the IP addresses in that way. So SendGrid is that kind of layer. We use a lot of software services that already exist. We have some homegrown stuff. We mix and match to make sure that we're using the optimal kinds of IP addresses for the client, and it's in the safest sort of zone. So we see ourselves more as a managed services / service provider and less a reseller. We don't really sell software in that way. We're the guys that are sort of consultants that bring our own tools, in a certain sense.
So how does a music major, Japanese language
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
student, social media dude with fluffy hair get all technical like this, man?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, does it go back to just the simple, you started asking questions, that you just found a need and filled it?
I think that's a really fair way to say it. I think the other side of this is a couple things that should be noted is that there's a long history of people with very, very deep knowledge of email.
Yes.
Email's been around. It's baked into the fabric of the internet. And I have really, really smart technical people on my team that know a lot about email infrastructure and know a lot more than I do. So part of it came about because we were dealing with email issues and problems that I did not understand, and neither did the client, but my technical folks understood. So I was always in the middle trying to make it clear enough to clients so they would understand what we're doing and why there was a problem and what we're doing to fix it. And at the same time, turning around to the technical folks and saying, what is a way that we can bolster this better? Because as a layman, it seems weird that every time we have to do X, Y has to happen. And they'd say, well, this is the thing, or it's not a thing, or whatever. So then you sort of build up the musculature around it. But on a fundamental level, I mean, I think most business people are like this. You see problems and you like to solve the problems. And this is entirely demand driven. This isn't me saying, it'd be cool to have a company that just does this. Like, let me Google a bunch and learn how to do it. Before you know it, you're like, wow, a lot of companies are relying on us for just this one thing.
Are you like a money launderer for the mob, but it's just email? You enable spam. Is that what you're telling me? Come on, be honest.
It's a funny
Maybe
thing.
A little?
It's a funny thing because the level of innocuousness, the level of like simplicity and basic feeling of the companies that are cold emailing with us, and the number of interested replies they get, and how few spam reports they get, it's tough to sort of feel like there's anything untoward happening. Plus, we police our own clients pretty tightly. We charge a significant amount of money, so it's not really common that we get people that are trying to do shady things with us. There are a lot of places to send shady emails if folks want to do that, and paying us as much as they pay us really isn't the best way to send shady emails. There are Eastern European countries that will let you send a lot of emails if you really want to slip them into the inbox. Yeah. I would say that most of our clients are sort of very well-meaning software style companies that are venture backed, and they have reps that they're supposed to send 200 emails a day or 400 emails a day or whatever it is, and they're running into issues with that, and they just really need the email piece to not become a problem. So they bring in experts like us to help. So it's not really we're not really fueling spam operations.
So what is the typical scenario? Let's say you got this venture-backed firm. They've hired a few sales reps. They're trying to make do. They've got HubSpot, and maybe an outreach.
Sure.
Or maybe they're just using HubSpot, right? I mean, I know I've used HubSpot for 9 years.
Yeah, HubSpot works great.
Do they just notice deliverability or replies, whatever, just fall off a cliff, and they're like, "Holy crap, what is happening?"
That is definitely one thing that happens.
Okay. Then they're just in a scramble. They're doing a Google search, corporate cold email. I mean, what do they? How do they find you? What do they type in to search?
So there's two fundamental things that happen. One is people feel that their email deliverability has suffered. So they were sending emails, having a great time, getting their reply rates, and then it falls off, as you said. And they're like, whoa, email deliverability is having a problem. They might go down that rabbit hole. At the end of that rabbit hole, they might find us. The second path is they go, whoa, things worked great when I was sending 50 emails a day from HubSpot, but when I turn the volume up to 100 or 150 or 200, Google is making it very, very hard for me to do this. Why is that? And they go down that rabbit hole. At the end of that rabbit hole, they find us. There's a lot of other things that they could find along the way. They find email warming software. They find people that say you should switch to sending from Microsoft instead of Google. They find sales software like Reply.io, Outreach.io that maybe they think, okay, this will be better than if I send directly from HubSpot, blah, 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 blah. There's all these different paths. But eventually, at least a certain number of these companies find us, and we say, okay, great, we're going to move you off of sending from Google and Microsoft. We move them out of sending from HubSpot also, because HubSpot doesn't allow external email providers. They only allow Google and Microsoft, at least at this point. So then you end up having to help them with a little bit of a transition to sending from another place, email backend stuff, and then at the end of the day, they're back up and sending. They can send the capacity they need to. And just, smiles and flowers and dandelions, just butterflies. And that. It's like when things turn to color in The Wizard of Oz, like that kind of thing.
Is this like a 1 week process, a 1 month process?
So transitioning can be relatively quick, but most of our clients stay with us for 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, because once you switch and you're sending emails and it's working and your sales pipeline is doing all the things it needs to do, you don't really want to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's sort of pretty important.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
companies,
if Google or Microsoft is hammering you today and I switch to you, and just because it works for 9 months doesn't mean they want me to come back and resume those old habits.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So, clients expand their volume with us. They decrease their volume with us. We're their partners just to make sure that they can do the emailing they need to. And, as with everything, Weston, ROI really matters. I think that any sort of distortion on ROI, eventually needs to be corrected. Some companies never correct it until they sell out to private equity and the private equity company corrects it. Certainly adding another service layer like ours into your sales process changes the ROI equation. And that's part of the reason why we don't really have very many small businesses or companies that are sort of really early pre-revenue. They really kind of understand their cost per lead scenario and how their business functions. So when we say, hey, it's going to be at another $1,800 a month, $2,500 a month or more, or whatever it is, to fix this one thing in the layer, they really understand what that means. So we have very few clients that are like, well, we'll try it for a month and see what happens. We have clients that take the deliberation very seriously. They understand we have a bunch of technical calls. We've gone really deep on it. They really understand what we're doing and why. And they say, okay, we'll try it with the full knowledge that they might not be able to switch back very easily or comfortably. But in the case that they do need to switch back, we help them switch back. We do give them all the warnings, like, hey, you might have problems. But we don't really do a lot of weird lock-in and try to like play games. Yeah. Because a lot of times companies switch out and then they need to stop, or cold email stops being really important to them, and they go away for a time and then they come back. We have a lot of return clients too, because they say now cold email is important to us again. But the reason why I said the number of clients we have is because I think it's important for everyone listening. Most people talk really, really big, and you don't really know how many clients they have. We have 75. We don't have 75,000 or 750,000. We have 75. So you could either say that this is a very, very niche thing that only very, very few companies have a problem with and need experts to solve, or you could say that we're really bad at getting the word out in marketing. I don't know what the answer is to that, but it seems like a very, very niche thing. So maybe 1 in 100,000 of the people who listen to this will be like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to this guy. We need help with this right now. Maybe more. I don't know.
Well, I mean, email's dead, so you'll probably close up shop by the end of the year, right?
Yeah. Email, man.
Like everything's dead. SEO's dead.
Wild.
SEO's dead. Funnels are dead. VSLs are dead. Text messaging's dead. Social media's dead. Public speaking's dead.
Wes, why do you think
writing a book is dead?
Why is it just like because it's catchy, or do things actually die? Has anything ever died?
I think it's catchy. People are impressionable. So you're just looking to strike a nerve. Do you hit at the right time?
Do you find, is there anything that's actually dead?
Hey, listen, this is my podcast. I ask the questions, okay?
I can't think of a single marketing thing that I learned, even my first couple of years of getting into marketing and sales, that's actually died.
I mean, I think like faxing is even still alive. I think if you faxed my old number, it would convert to an email and come to me.
Wow.
So faxing might be dead. I haven't sent a fax in a long time.
There were a lot of cold faxes back in the day. Is that a thing?
Yes, I'm sure. And people would get pissed because back then you were spending money on the paper and the toner.
Oh yeah.
So
that's right.
You're sending me a fax and I'm paying 1 or 3 or 7. Like some people would lease their fax like in really early days. So it might cost them, 25 years ago, it could cost them, I don't know, 10 cents, 25 cents to receive this spam. Imagine how pissed you'd be if you had to pay for every spam message you received.
Wow.
Holy crap.
That's pretty wild. I was looking, there was like an internet archive museum type thing, and they have the original text of the first business solicitation email ever sent. It's like in the 70s, I think. We should find it. We'll add it to the show notes. That's what people always say on podcasts. I'm not saying you need to add it to the show notes, but we can find the link. It's really interesting to see. It's just a straight up like, you should buy from us. Here's what we're selling. And apparently the person who sent it says they made millions of dollars from that. They sent it.
They might have, right? I mean, what they say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. Seriously.
So
you're saying that the big innovation of our time on this earth is $0 to receive spam. That was the big innovation. The second they switched it to mean you didn't have to pay to receive it, things went crazy.
Well, like Seth Godin, right? Says marketers ruin everything.
I think we just backed our way into solving the text spam problem. If you design a system with the telcos that by asking someone to stop, it costs them money, that would be interesting. Because you reply with stop and it's supposed to stop the email. But if it's sort of like a chargeback system for text. So if someone's sending you spam over text and you reply with spam, stop, and every time someone marks it as spam, it costs them a penny or two.
It's supposed to cost them $1,500 or something crazy, but I've never heard of anybody getting hammered with that.
If anyone knows anything about that, reach out. Let Wes and I know.
Spam texting is a big deal. It's supposed to be this huge no-no.
Yeah.
But I don't see it get implemented.
Well, you mean you don't see people get fined or whatever?
Yeah, I don't see people.
Did we go too deep on email? Did we lose our audience? What do you think? How are we going to get them back? Now their dishes are finished or whatever they were doing while they were listening?
Hey, it's still interesting. They got to know it, and especially now. I mean, supposedly Google just made a big change, right? February 1st
they did make a big change. Yeah,
was supposed to be the cliff, but then I've heard it's been maybe quietly pushed back to May 1st. But I mean, regardless, I guess people are starting to take this seriously, right? DMARC, DChem, SPF, blah blah blah.
Yeah. All that stuff really, really matters. It's actually mattered for a long time, and most legitimate email senders already have things properly configured. But now things are getting a little bit more intense because Google is further trying to put a nail in the bad actors that deal in email.
There's a lot of bad stuff. I'm surprised at the spam that gets through. I have Google Workspaces. I have Apple, for private, like bad.
Yeah.
By bad, I mean like really
clearly
detailed.
Spam.
Well, I get phishing. I mean, that looks good. I can see my parents clicking stuff all the time because you got to know, right, and really be looking closely. It's like, because it gets through to your regular email, and it's that phishing. I see people get their whole worlds stolen, their whole lives stolen.
And I think it's probably going to get worse. I think that AI is accelerating this.
Yeah.
I also think that this is pure speculation. I think that likely we imagine as marketers are all excited about AI and what it could do to customize emails for every recipient and things like that. I think that largely actual AI generated manipulation is going to be heavily discouraged from email. And I think that largely using AI systems to make the email very customized and like very sort of targeted and sort of very psychologically involved in the recipient is going to be frowned upon and going to create deliverability problems. That's my feeling. As opposed to the opposite of thinking, oh, this is a holy grail for marketers because I'm going to get emails that every single line is related directly to me and it was written by a large language model. I think that I would not be surprised if Google basically said, hey, if you're using AI to write emails that are customized per recipient, we're not going to be happy to deliver it. And the reason why I think that is that the ultimate spam is one that incorporates a ton of information. It's, hi, Tom, I was just talking to your financial advisor, Barbara, and she mentioned to me this, and then I saw that, and it's like, you're like, wow, this seems really credible. Like, holy crap, like this really must be the person that the insurance company assigned to me in order to help me secure my claim or whatever the hell it is. Mm-hmm. And like all that manipulation is going to be probably detectable, or if it's not already detectable, and it will ultimately lead not to a holy grail of marketers being able to get an even higher open and click rate, but possibly email systems being like, don't send.
So if I send a bulk email from Keep or HubSpot,
yeah,
you're saying Google is going to still be reading that and possibly throttling it?
That's my prediction's so terrible. I think that a regular email that you're sending in the normal way is probably going to be fine as long as you're following all the normal rules, SPF, DMARC, DKIM, etc. I think where things might get weird is if you fast forward a few months or whatever, and every single one of these emails is being highly customized for the specific recipient using large language models to rewrite your email newsletter or whatever. That's where I think that they might start to see that as manipulation in a way and not a friendly kind of customization. That's my feeling. But I might be wrong. I'm usually wrong, so it's easy. Everyone listening can disregard what I'm saying.
Well, I think just like we have malware, software on our computers, I think we're going to have AI detection filters. We're going to be trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Or at least identify it.
That's right.
Because they're just like cold email. There could be something good in there, that I want to read about. But I should at least know.
You should know that it's unsolicited. Yeah, you should know that it's an unsolicited email from someone that's not in your address book, that's not affiliated with your company, that is, and if they're doing anything deceptive, like pretending to be someone that's already illegal. You're not allowed to pretend to be someone else. You're not allowed to pretend to be someone. You're not allowed to, misrepresent yourself. That's not allowed by law. Right. The FTC's written about this. So I think that probably any bit of that kind of thing probably will be easily more detected. And I do love your vision of having an AI that sits on your computer or sits in different places, and it's basically saying like, hey, you should really be careful with this. We don't know why, if this is real or not.
So what are some cold email best practices that people can leverage? Are you seeing inside your client's world, or are you just helping on the tech side?
We'd see inside all of them, because the fourth part of all the technical stuff I mentioned really is the email copy, the targeting, and things like that. So we typically have a view, and we sometimes get involved, but we oftentimes share information across. There's one of the things that people do on the internet when they have very few clients is they start to say like, this is the magic template. This thing works every time, like that kind of thing. And you know this, Wes, because you've seen hundreds of different clients do all sorts of stuff. The devil really is in the details, and this is an enormous economy. The United States economy is enormous. There are so many different types of jobs, different types of people, different kinds of companies, different kinds of targeting. The emails that you send that resonate with your audience are going to be very, very different from the template that some dude posted, guaranteed. The clients that we see that succeed in an outsized manner, so we're talking 1 to 3, 4, 5% interested reply rates. These are people that have really spent a lot of time thinking about who they're emailing, why they're saying what they're saying. A lot of them don't have heavy value propositions in the emails. A lot of them have very, very carefully worded emails that have the right stance of forwardness that they need for their audience. In other words, they're spending a lot of time thinking about the person that they're emailing and all of the objections that they know come to the mind of the person they're emailing because they've done dozens and dozens and dozens of phone calls with people like them. So they know what happens when they say, A, that person's going to think B, so we need to have a little bit of language in there. We know when we invite the CMO to an event, the CMO almost always declines, so we're not going to invite them to an event. We're going to instead ask them if they want to be invited to an event. These are all insights that you come to from very deeply thinking about who you're emailing. I find that most people kind of whip up an email in 5-10 minutes and start sending, and when you start to poke holes in it, it crumbles. It's like, do you really think that this CMO is going to take 20 minutes of their day to learn about your cookieless whatever? And it's like,
people don't do this though. I mean, I've got
yeah,
I've got clients all over, every industry,
yeah,
thousands that I've worked with in 18
Yeah.
plus years, and writing and people that are truly experts in their field,
yeah,
but they cannot communicate. They are great at being an IT provider and
Yep.
an MSP. They're great mortgage people. They're great handyman. They're great auto repair. They can't write a message to save their lives.
yep. What do we say for them? Is that what you're going to ask? That's a hard question.
Yeah, I mean,
I
they
think
struggle.
that-
I don't know anybody that enjoys writing, right? I mean, I have colleagues that are writers. We enjoy writing, but I mean,
yeah.
a typical business owner does not like writing, and they're not good at it.
I think that's unfortunate. No, I don't. I think that no one is judging the quality of your writing in a cold email. However, there's a concept that a friend of mine told me, which I often think about, that he calls the bozo switch. And the bozo switch is when you're talking to someone and you're generally agreeing with what they're saying. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, okay. And then they say something that's stupid. Right? And then you're like, oh, I'm talking to a bozo. I didn't realize that before, but now I know. You understand what I mean? Like that switch that happens. So oftentimes people write these emails where it's like, hi, I'm Tom from blah, blah, blah. Okay, you don't really need to announce yourself at the top because your name is in the signature. Okay, fine, but whatever. We do, IT solutions in the wider Baltimore area, and clients really love us because of these 3 reasons. If you need voice over IP, we'd love to be helpful. Let me know if this would interest you. That's a fine cold email. There's nothing wrong with having a local IT service provider. But that's not the emails that people write. They put something in there that makes the recipient go, this is like, why is this written in blue? Or like, why is the signature have like this weird logo, this graphic on it? This is odd. Like, why did they say hi, comma, Tom, dash? Like, is that grammatical? Like, why? There's always something in there that you're just like, no, don't do the thing that, or it's really wordy and kind of complicated, or they have some sort of bullet list that's like, why are you listing all this stuff? Like, people know what IT services providers do. Like, what is going on? So if you just like keep it really simple and remove all of the bozo switches, you probably are going to be okay.
But I think they don't even know. It's like if you have salad in your teeth or a booger on your face, you don't know it unless somebody else tells you.
Yeah.
That's why they keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to do an event where people send in their cold emails and then we pick them apart, if they're willing to do that publicly, that would be fun. But I don't think people really want that. It would embarrass folks. I'm sorry in advance.
Well, some do though. There's enough people that that do want to get better, and they
Yeah.
recognize it's like when I wanted to get serious about golf, I went and had my swing recorded. You
Yeah.
know, and this was in 1993. Before that was, it shows you how long it's been since I had my swing recorded. So I got it recorded in 1993. You had to go to the place. The guy had a camera from the top of you, from in front, and from behind. And last year, it was a little over a year ago, I got another swing analysis. And I go out to the course, and I'm looking around saying, where is it? Because it was like a little studio the guy that the golf pro had set up, at the side of the range. I'm like, where's the recording? And it's like, oh, it's all on his phone. Right? He just stood behind me. Now he couldn't get above me, but he got behind me and he got in front of me. And boom, draws all the lines, draws the boxes, draws the circles, does before and after, side by side. Like, holy crap. But I just tell you that,
How was your swing?
I used to be really good, but I have a decent swing for somebody that used to be good and is no longer good. But I digress. But to get good, I recorded myself.
Yeah.
Right when I wanted to get become a better speaker, I went to a training in L.A. It was a 2 or 3 day training. They'd record us on a VHS, and we'd go sit in a little cubicle with a headset on and watch ourselves. Oh, that's painful. When I wanted to get serious about sales, I hired a coach. He made me record my calls, and he would break them down. And so if you want to get better at writing, send in your emails and we'll pick them apart. But
I think it's true. I think that's accurate. I think that the real issue, of course, is that this is the big caveat that I like to say, so as not to discourage people listening. Oftentimes, you do speak the same language of the people that you're selling to, and oftentimes they're also not judging your writing when they read it. They actually are more interested in, if they're going to bother to open it and read it anyway, they want to know like what you actually do, what you're trying to sell, why you're reaching out to them. And as long as that is crystal clear, you're not really doing anything wrong. And an example of that I think is a little bit better, if you think about cold email, I'm not talking about crazy high volume cold email like the kind we do, but just regular old cold email. It's sort of like if you went to an industry event and you were going to do a self-introduction, you're not going to say anything weird. You're like, I'm Benny, I do an IT services kind of thing in the email field. If you have problems with email sending and delivery, perhaps we can be helpful
but
to you.
people they get super anxious about that, and they're also usually they don't say anything that's memorable. It's just totally forgettable.
That's why you got to have hair like this that we talked about at the beginning of this call.
That's right.
Never forget me.
Everyone will remember you. And then we kept you in the dark.
Yeah, well, now the light's smoothed out, so if anyone
it got mo better.
It got much better because the sun is setting. Now that we're going to launch into part 2 of our conversation, right? So we're going to do the next 90 minutes. I'm just kidding.
Now I got to eat. But your website it is senders.co.
Yeah, senders.co. And you can email me, benny@senders.co if you want. Anything you
Who should
want.
reach out to you? I mean, you mentioned some pricing kind of in passing.
Sure.
Is there anybody too big or too small that should reach out?
So I would say no. Feel free to reach out to me if you feel like you're having sending and deliverability problems. We don't typically get inundated with free requests for help, but we do help people if they come to us. So if you feel like you're having an acute problem and you reach out, we will work earnestly to help you. I'd say that we're not the best at doing like an email deliverability sort of like assessment. There are lots of tools out there like Glock apps and things like that you can run a test and then it'll give you feedback. I mean, if you come to us, we'll probably do tests like that. Not that Glock apps is the best tool ever, but there is a tool called Glock apps that does things like that. We have a deliverability checker on our website that you can use as well. But if you feel like you have some sort of issue and it's a problem and you're a business that does especially cold emails, feel free to reach out. We'd love to walk you through exactly what we do and why, and also give you recommendations that don't involve paying us. That's your thing.
Yep.
What are you going to eat, Wes?
Sounds good. Whatever is left over in the fridge.
You look like someone that lifts weights.
I lift a little. I train a lot of jiu-jitsu.
Yes, that's the
active.
thing. You got the jiu-jitsu. You got the jiu-jitsu vibe. I don't.
You saying I got big ugly ears? Is that what you're saying? Why you gotta end like this, man? Why?
Do you actually have a bit of cauliflower ear?
A little bit.
Wow.
If you look at my old pictures right back there, I got little baby tiny ears. No, like that one's a little fat right there. It's not terrible, but
How much do you train jiu-jitsu? Is you like 5 days a week kind of
a
thing?
lot.
Pretty
Yeah, 5 to 6
And-
days a week.
How old were you when you started?
Started 7 years ago, so I was almost
Wow.
47.
Wow. How did you deal with? I have a lot of friends in the jiu-jitsu world. How did you deal with getting injured all the time? Because they always get injured. Their necks get tweaked, their arms get tweaked. It seems it didn't bother you so
Yeah.
much.
I didn't get injured all the time per se. I do have a couple little nagging things, but dude, I'm still sore and stiff all the time.
Is it from jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
That's
wild.
life, right? I mean, if you're I was bored at the gym. I was doing the same routine in the gym I'd been doing since I was 14 years old.
Like what, squats, deadlifts, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I was bored, half-assing it, kind of going through the motions. And a friend of mine, he nagged me to go train. For 6 months, he nagged me. I was like, what? You're crazy, dude. I went
Right
and
when you
did
hit
it,
that
and I was
mat?
like,
Right when you hit that mat, you were just like, all right.
yeah, this dude, he's 20 years older than me.
Wow.
And much smaller. He was an Air Force guy, so he still trained. He got his black belt at like 72.
Wow.
But I got in his closed guard and could not get away. And I was
Wow.
like, how is this dude that's 70 pounds lighter than me, 20 years older, how is he controlling me? Like,
Yep.
I was like, I couldn't
Well,
figure.
I think that you're bringing up a really good point. That's also how business is. This is not a young man's game. Business is not a young person's game. It's not.
It
As
is
I
and it
get
isn't.
older, well, I think certain sectors are
You
young
need that
people's
young
games.
blood, like my son. Like I kind of hit the doldrums in my business, and I'm just now coming out of it. And because my second son, he lives here. He's an entrepreneur and real estate. He was just hopping my ass. Go do this, do that, do this promotion, that promotion. I'm like, all right, I'm digging back in. I'm like, all right,
But-
kind of lighting the spark again.
But the people listening to this that feel that way, because keep in mind, people can hit the doldrums with the $2 million business, $5 million, $10 million, so it happens to everybody. I think the key things that folks should take out of this are people like Wes help you figure out what is blocking your own way to unlocking sales. Because what I found with business people very often is there's a giant boulder sitting in front of the door to their office, and every day they slide past it, barely sliding past it. And guys like Wes come, you work with them, and they just were like, have you tried moving the giant boulder? And they're like, huh? Oh, I didn't even. Oh yeah, I guess I could, but that would require some effort, So I feel like we always have to be thinking about things. That's why I don't think it's a young person's game at all, because what I've found is that most of the people controlling all the budget are over the age of 35. So if you're 22 and you're trying to sell to a 35 or 45 or 55-year-old, that's kind of a tough proposition. So there's all these different angles that come with sales. Cold email is not new. Anyone listening to this has probably been cold emailing since 2001, 2003, 2000. Oh, I tried that in 2012. Like, this is what happened. Fine. I'm not saying it's a new game, and I'm not saying anything about it is novel or new. So I think that a lot of times it has to do with removing the mental blocks that oftentimes coaches and other folks can help you do, examining all the normal stuff, opt-in email, cold email, what is going on your website? How are your sales meetings going? How are you positioning it? All these things. You relook at all the stuff again. You get your ego down. You get your ass whooped. And then you build back up. And then, at least you have a new view on things, even if you can't find things that matter. I think you're talking about something very, very fundamental.
Well, and so being older helps because you've just done the reps.
Yeah.
Right. But what you describe is kind of like what I was talking about, recording yourself, having an outside perspective. So having a peer helps.
Yeah.
Now, the assumption is that peer gives a shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Is not trying to sabotage you, doesn't have some ego in there, right? Because it's like, I could have my dad evaluate what I'm doing. He'll be honest and sincere, but, he doesn't know my world. He was in commercial insulation. I could look at his stuff like, I don't know, it looks good to me. So, obviously
it's true.
I could see an obvious flaw somewhere of the work that he did, but when you're dealing with somebody with experience, their quote unquote flaws, Tiger Woods' swing flaw is like this tiny.
Yeah.
It's like move one pinky, one half of a degree, and it's going to affect the ball flight. So you need somebody that can see that. And so, usually that comes with age, and it just like Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, it's amazing how many people don't get it. I was training the other morning with a guy. He's a purple belt. So, I mean, and he actually started before I did. He took breaks. But so he's trained for 10 or 12 years. And I was showing him some things. You know why we do these drills and warm-ups like every single day? We do these warm-up drills. I'm like, this is how you use it. He's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, how do you not know that? Right? But there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
And it really is the old adage, the martial artist, the karate guy is like, I'm not afraid of a guy that has 10,000 moves. I'm afraid of the guy that has one move he's practiced 10,000 times. And there's a ton of legitimacy to that. After 7 years of jiu-jitsu, probably I've averaged for 7 years, 5 days a week, which is a lot. Most people, to progress, they say go 3 days a week. And a lot of people do like 2 days a week. So to go 5, and that's an average, right? I mean, a lot of times I'll go 6 and I have trips here or there.
That compounds.
What?
It just compounds over time.
Yeah. But so I've now done a move probably 10,000 times. And it's hard when you fight your peers, you feel like you're not getting any better. But then a new guy comes in and you just wreck them with one hand. It's like, okay, I guess this stuff is working.
Beautiful.
And so you've got to trust that because but it's boring. It's boring doing the same thing 10,000 times.
Well, now if you're talking. This is the real deal. Because everything that I've accomplished in my life, and it sounds like you too, was basically spending time on things that aren't very fun, in a sense, in service of something that's greater or bigger or more exciting. And I'm even talking personally, I'm not talking about like a greater power or something like that. I mean, just like, wow, you want to learn Japanese? Well, okay, so there's a couple thousand characters, and each one has its own context, its own way. There's no real shortcuts to learning that. You can't even learn it by just existing. Even native speakers have to learn the characters one by one. It's like, what are you going to do, You want to play the violin? You want to play the viola? You want to do that kind of stuff? Like, it's just a lot of time spent that you just light on fire. And I remember when I first got to like seven figures for my business, which was years ago now, I just ran the numbers back, and I had figured out that I'd spent 1,000 hours on sales calls. not that crazy if you think about it. If you run the averages,
Well,
how
you have
long a sales call
2,000
is.
you have 2,000 working hours in a year,
Yeah, there you
right?
go.
If you work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I
So,
mean, most sales calls are 30 minutes, but you do a few minutes of prep
but
and
if
you have
you're
to do
in
emails
sales,
after.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, if you're in sales, sitting at your desk working, half the
So
time, hopefully you're on the phone.
what often happens, and if you're good at getting leads, right, and then you can fill your calendar, then you're even better.
Right.
What I find oftentimes is the antidote to people that come to me with very complex sales issues or growth issues. Like, okay, well, how many calls a day are you doing? Not cold calls, I'm talking about that, but how many sales calls are you doing a day? Like, oh, I'm doing 2 a week. It's like, okay, that's, I'm Connor, who I mentioned before. Connor was my buddy who I built the business with. He told me really early on, early 20s, he said, I don't know where he read it or someone told him, he said, we should be doing 3 calls a day. And if the next day you don't have 3 calls booked, you better do something to get the calls booked. And if you're going to be skipping Friday because whatever's happening, you better make sure that you're making up those 3 calls the next week. And I remember just being like, wow, that's crazy. But it's hard to find a company that's not growing, that's doing less than, let's say, 15 calls a week. And if you find a company that's actually doing 15 calls a week like clockwork, I'd be very surprised if they weren't growing. Now, of course, there's headwinds and churn and all this stuff happens, but I'm saying that's a lot. So I almost have no real, I don't feel any empathy for someone who says like, oh, I'd really love to grow my company. It's like, great, well, how many meetings are you doing or whatever? And they're like, oh, 3 or 4 calls a week. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to,
Dabbling.
yeah, okay, cool. You do Jiu-Jitsu, you roll with your friends when you feel like it. Okay.
Yeah.
How are you going to, that's not how you build.
You've got to become fanatic.
You kind of have to. Yeah. Yeah. And then you have to instill that fanaticism in other team members if you want them to do the same thing, at least to a certain extent.
Which is hard. If they're just as fanatic, they would be doing their own thing.
It's possible.
So
for sure.
You can't get too upset about that. Just understand they're not going to be as fanatical about you.
Yeah. Well, that's why you
are.
break it down into pieces and you have processes and all these things.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So you gotta be willing. You still need A players, but you understand these A players. If you're lucky, they'll be 90% of you. If they were 100%, then they would replace you. They don't need you.
Yeah.
So
it also makes sense. Like, what are you providing them?
Yeah, not everybody wants to do their own thing, right? But
Yeah.
people don't want to work for jerks. They want. I'm having this conversation with a client of mine right now. We got off a call, and I'm like, and he's talking about the team isn't as motivated. It's a technical team. They do IT services and things like that, app development, big projects, huge projects. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, multi-year installations.
Wow.
And not everybody's motivated by money. You got to find out what each person, what lights their fire, and provide that. Maybe it's recognition. Maybe it's a trip. Maybe it's Apple Vision Pro, right? Whatever. Yeah. And because I always say as salespeople, we have to match how our prospects buy.
Yes.
Right? And so we have to adjust. So as a leader of a team, you can make the argument either way. I'm a hard ass. You're going to be with me. We're going to push you hard like the Marines, right? The few, the proud. Okay, that works for some, but usually you're babysitting these people to a degree.
Yeah.
Right? You have to raise your level of expectations, but you have to treat each one. I have 7 kids, right? I discipline them all differently.
You've 7 children?
Yep.
Wow.
Some there you go up there.
Yeah, I saw how many people are in that picture. I thought maybe you rented some family members to put.
No. Some needed a spanking, some needed a timeout, some needed, their TV time taken away. Some just had to be looked at. I'm like, I'm disappointed in you. Ah!
Yeah.
So, same thing with your people. You sell to them how they buy. And it's up to us to figure that out. We have to read people. But going back to the bozo rule, a lot of people don't realize they're being bozos. They think they're the greatest thing since, sliced bread, or they just don't care. They're not people oriented. They're task oriented. They're goal oriented. They just move forward. They don't care whose toes they step on.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point. I always felt that, and maybe this is applicable to things in your life, I'm not sure. I always found that if something required a lot of motivation to do, there was something wrong. Right? Like if you're in the, like you see this all the time, I mean, in movies and whatever, but that sort of, it's like 9 a.m. and they're eating their toast and they're drinking coffee and they're like, I gotta go to work today. Like, gosh, I gotta, I can't, okay, I gotta okay, like let's, like if that's really how your life is, maybe there's, now granted there are things you can't control, but in business, one of the things that's nice about business is a lot of elements are controllable. You can hire someone, you can fire someone, you can be fired. Magically, the day after being fired, being firing people is terrible for all the reasons that it's terrible. But really, if they have a lot of responsibility and you let them go, the next day they wake up without any of that responsibility. They wake up also without the paycheck, but you're relieving them of all these things. Try to do that with a family member. Try to do it with a cousin who's going through a hard time. You can't just be like, okay, cousin, I'm letting you go today. By tomorrow, you don't have to. It's just not how it works with family. So business is nice because it's so malleable, and you can bring in vendors and you can leave vendors. You can bring in tools and you can let tools go, and you can kind of have this. So what I would say is, oftentimes if you feel like your people aren't motivated or someone's not motivated, it might not have anything to do with you or their job. It might not. No. And that's also a distinct possibility.
Sure.
So I always find like people go through points where they are lacking a little bit of motivation and the motivation comes back. Maybe the question is, hey, you seem to be a little bit less motivated. Does that mean you're thinking about leaving? Or is it unrelated? Hard questions. And they might be like, yeah, I'm feeling a little demotivated because that big project was moved over there and da-da-da. Like, oh, there's a reason. Oh, okay. So it's, okay, there's a reason. Well, the tide might come back in your favor over the next year of the project. I'll keep you in mind. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Amen. Thanks for, you know what I mean? It's like there always seems to be layers to this, but I always think about motivation because if you really have to gather a lot of it, probably something's up.
There's always layers. People are predictable, all right, but you have to read them correctly to be able to predict.
Interesting.
And that's where most people, they're bozos. They don't pay attention. They're in it for themselves. Then they make the bozo statement, and then life gets hard, and then they complain. And, whatever issues you have going on are your fault. Once you accept that and realize it, and,
sure.
then it's under your control to fix it.
Yeah.
As long as it's them, those assholes, those idiots, those dipshits, you keep that up. Like, well, good luck. Things are going to stay tough.
Yeah. So which one of your children is the one who analyzes your fathering? You got someone that analyzes your golf swing, but which one of your children is the one that pulls you aside?
They all analyze your fathering.
Yeah, but you usually have one. Maybe you have more than one. Usually you have one child that really has the clearest view of dad and can help all the other kids navigate it.
Oh, that's the oldest for sure.
Yeah. That's
he's
cool.
very intellectual. He's super smart. Unfortunately, all my kids are smart.
That's great.
It's been cool seeing them, but it's like, as far as like raw brain power, the oldest, has that in spades. Wow. And he's very observant and he's the oldest, so there's certain things that come with being the oldest, right? Everything you hear about the oldest, the middle child,
I'm the youngest. You can tell probably.
Now
that I said that, everyone
there are
listening.
certain things that are true, man, on all of those. So.
But you have a superabundance of middle children. I believe you have 5 middle children.
But we have a true middle child, right?
That's right.
Out of 7, we have a true middle child.
I had a friend we don't have to talk forever about this stuff, but I had a friend who has a very big family like yours. I think there's maybe 6 children, so you beat them, but and he is in the middle, and then he has two or three older and 2 or 3 younger men, both boys and girls. Their family got extremely rich when he was maybe 13 or something. So he has siblings that grew up as rich kids and siblings that grew up regular, like middle class. And we're talking a lot of wealth, like $50 million plus, $50 to $100 million in family wealth that came relatively quickly.
Right.
And it was through a private equity infusion of cash to a business that had no liquidity before. So he worked at the company for 10, 15 years. And then when they decided to convert with the private equity thing, they were like, we're assigning everyone stock value based on how long they've been at the company. And it was a multi-billion-dollar thing. And so he just went from someone that was making a normal salary to being like, oh, here's your portion of $50 million or whatever it was. It's like very wild, right? And he said it was so fascinating seeing the difference. It was like the younger kids like, Daddy, I need my Mercedes or my BMW. Like, how come? And the older kids like, I got this old beat-up truck. Like, this is cool. And it's in the same family, the same group of kids.
Yeah.
That's wild to see it in one. And he's right in the middle. So he's like not super tied to either one. He like gets all the benefit of being part of a rich family, but doesn't need it. Really interesting.
Well, my kid, they complain about the baby because she's 17 years younger than my oldest.
Wow.
And I tell them straight up, I said, look, I'm just tired. Like, Ava can have the car keys. I don't care. I just need some silence. I need some rest.
So the baby gets all the privileges, none of the rules. The tired dad who's training jiu-jitsu all the time.
She gets the rules, but she gets away with crap the others didn't get away with back in the day. But now she gets siblings that'll come in and correct her.
Yeah. Well, after
I'm
7 kids, you've seen almost every possible disaster that can happen.
Oh yeah,
and the results.
I love it seeing the kids take over. I'm like, good, yeah. Listen to your brother. Go do that thing.
That must be fun.
Man, crazy
Must be fun.
times.
Okay, well, I won't keep
All right.
you from whatever you need to do
Lunchtime.
next.
Senders.co.
Hey, I really enjoyed this chat, Wes.
Man, well, thanks for coming on. This will go live quickly. So go play in that Brooklyn traffic, all right? Go tell them to stop honking. You need one of those red lights, it says recording outside your window, and then they'll stop honking.
That's true, actually. I hear that. Yeah.
Put that, let me know how it works. All right, man. Have a good one.
Bye. Have a good one. Bye.